The coronavirus has devastated the airline industry. U.S. air travel has dropped 95% compared to last year, and the number of flights scheduled globally is down by 63%. The insides of airports are empty, but outside is another story. While some airlines have started transporting cargo on passenger planes, more than 2/3 of the world's commercial aircraft are grounded.
It's somewhere between 14 and 15,000 aircraft that are parked, or almost 60% of the fleet.
Never before in history have airlines had to ground so many planes so quickly.
Our customers have come to us and said, look, we're parking literally hundreds of aircraft per day, and logistically, it's very, very complex. This is a particular difficult time, and we've created a particular app that literally allows them to virtually park the aircraft.
With no demand for flights, Delta and United reported their first quarterly losses in more than 5 years. American Airlines told CNBC its revenue is down 90% from a year ago. Parking hundreds of aircraft is also adding to their losses. These planes can't just sit idle. They need routine maintenance and a place to be stored. And when you suddenly have thousands of planes with nowhere to go, it becomes a logistical nightmare. Before the coronavirus hit, airplanes were where they were meant to be, in the air. At certain times of the year, there could be as many as 20,000 planes in flight at the same time around the world. At the end of 2019, the global air fleet was nearly 24,000, and now more than 16,000 of those massive machines need a place to park.
And that number can continue to go up as airlines continue to cut their networks.
Aircraft storage facilities have been around for decades, but never in history has the aviation industry had to park so many planes at once. Airlines are having to get creative about finding space for planes. A recent flyover of a storage facility in Victorville, California, shows planes fit together like puzzle pieces on unused runways. Victorville is well known as one of the world's biggest airplane boneyards, a storage location for out-of-service or old planes. It was already storing Southwest's fleet of Boeing 737 MAX 8s, but it's now storing hundreds of other aircraft due to the lack of demand in air travel. Victorville, along with boneyards in Roswell, New Mexico and Tucson, Arizona, are currently the top 3 locations for parked aircraft. They've collectively stored 800 planes so far.
Routine parking happens from time to time with very, very small volumes of aircraft, but this is completely unprecedented.
It's so widespread that aircraft are being parked at airports all over. Major airports now have many parked aircraft on the ground, and they're going to be there for a while.
As you can see here, American Airlines is using Tulsa International Airport as a parking lot for many of its jets. There's currently over 50 grounded airplanes parked here.
Nothing this big has ever landed in the Alice. More than a dozen planes are now sitting in a storage facility at the Outback Airport.
Aircraft range in size. For scale, a standard football field is 160 feet wide. A narrow-body jet like Boeing 737 has a wingspan of 117 feet, but wide-body airliners can be twice that. The world's largest plane, Airbus's A380, has a wingspan of 261 feet. Even aircraft manufacturer Airbus is being asked to help.
Our customers have come to us and said, look, we're parking literally hundreds of aircraft per day, and we have a huge amount of maintenance work to do with that. And we've created a particular app, and that's an app that helps our customers to work out exactly how much maintenance is needed and even logistically where the aircraft are. And that enables them to very quickly optimize how to park the aircraft, where to park them, and also to prepare them when they come out of service when this is through.
Airbus, along with Boeing, dominate the commercial aircraft industry, and together make up 91% of the market share. Airbus has over 11,000 planes in operation. Skywise is a digital platform the manufacturer offers its customers to keep up the health of an aircraft. It collects data from systems and sensors to help predict maintenance, as well as help with logistics of daily operations. Airbus has added a new feature to help airlines find parking. Parking an airplane isn't as easy as just finding a spot. Factors like how long the plane will be out of service and what type of maintenance needs to be done play a role in finding a location.
A decision is made as to whether it's basically storage or whether it's actual parking. Now, parking is typically relatively short term. It's a bit like putting something in the fridge compared to longer term storage, which would be where you put it in the freezer. So certain pieces of maintenance must be done before you can park up an aircraft, even if it's just for a couple of days.
These aircraft cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and maintaining them is not cheap. Even when parked, they need to run the engines, cycle fluids, and move the tires among many other checklist items. This is why some airlines are flying with just a few passengers aboard, just to keep them running. When airlines know the plane is going to sit for months at a time, they're sent to the desert because the dry climate helps prevent corrosion.
If it sits on the ground for 1 or 2 months and it hasn't been operated that whole time, it requires a lot more maintenance to bring it back into service than, let's say, if it's been started up every 10 days or so. I was just speaking with the head of maintenance for a significant U.S. airline, and what this person told me is that right now they have need for X number of aircraft, but they're actually keeping 2X, in other words, twice as many active, and they're rotating them, in and out. So that way, for those other aircraft, you won't have to worry about the more extensive maintenance to bring them back into service.
At the moment, we have about 80% of the fleet in the parking mode.
Etihad Airways, for example, returned over 100 planes to its main base in Abu Dhabi, where it sealed up engines and sensors to prevent things like sand from getting into critical areas.
They're a very intricate, complex piece of machinery. It's not like parking a car.
The outlook for coronavirus is still unclear. Boeing told its shareholders that air travel could take 2 to 3 years to return to normal. Airlines have had to consolidate fleets to cut back on costs.
International travel has been hurt the most, and with good reason, and it's very difficult now to travel between countries. This means that long-haul aircraft, which are generally what we call twin aisles or wide bodies, are going to suffer more than single aisles like the 737 and A320. The A380, the big double-decker that Airbus launched, a little bit over a decade ago, every one of those is on the ground. 100% of the A380s are parked today. The larger it is and the older it is, the more it suffers. So when you down gauge, you're going to go to the smallest aircraft, the most economical aircraft.
Airlines before coronavirus were doing great. They had the highest employment levels in the United States, at least in 17 years. They were hiring like crazy, pilots, flight attendants, expecting this big rush in travel to continue. And we've seen it over the last decade. They had a decade of profitability, and now they're going to be posting the first losses in years.
Airlines have seen incredible losses, and analysts don't expect that to stop anytime soon. Like many businesses, large and small, they are in survival mode and looking for ways to conserve cash. Lack of demand could lead to canceling or deferring future orders from manufacturers. Airbus and Boeing have already cut back on production, and both companies are planning to slash jobs. As for the thousands of aircraft parked around the world, retirement could come much earlier than expected.
One thing to understand is that before this crisis hit, airlines couldn't get these planes fast enough. One of their biggest complaints was that aircraft were delayed, so the market for aircraft was very high. Airbus and Boeing, which dominate aircraft production, had been sold out of some of their best sellers through pretty much the middle of the decade. So it was even hard to get a slot. We're going to see that kind of reverse, and you'll see some cancellations, you'll see deferrals, and you'll see that market sort of loosen up. But some airlines, because fuel is such a big cost, they do want the more fuel efficient aircraft going forward. But the timing of when they get those planes, that's going to change. It'll all depend on when demand comes back.
6,000 of these are 15 years or older. 4,000 of these are, 20 years or more. And so they're already approaching retirement age. And we're in a situation now where we have thousands of excess aircraft. So if you're an airline and you're deciding what aircraft you're going to keep around, you don't want to spend millions of dollars on maintenance to keep your older aircraft around for them to fly in the next year. So the impact here is dramatic.
There is no timeline for when the world will return back to normal. So for now, much of these aircraft will sit waiting for the return to normalcy like the rest of us.